Good morning. Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington. It is Saturday, the 20th of June, day before Father's Day. Well, I've been off for a week enjoying our cabin in Idaho that my parents built some 40 years ago. I helped build it. It's on a beautiful setting on the Middle Fork of the Payette River north of Boise. And a few days ago, I snapped the picture that you're now seeing in the background. There were 6 deer, white-tailed deer. There's a place where a creek comes into the river right in the bend of our river is by our cabin. We can see it from the deck, and we're looking down on these 6 deer. And that's the place where they bed down at night. We saw a mother and a fawn swim across the river. Fascinating time and a good time to get away. And while we got away, we bought our groceries here. We masked before going to the grocery store. We use our hand sanitizer. We're very safe. On the way there, we stopped at a gas station and had to hand a credit card because we gassed up in Oregon, sanitized the credit card, and then took a back road from Ontario, Oregon, near New Plymouth, bypassing the little town of Emmett, going to Horseshoe Bend, and north from there up to Crouch, and then up to our cabin. And the only person we saw was the person who pumped our gas. And on the way back, pretty much the same thing, gassing up in Baker City, stopping for a restroom break, always masking up and using our sanitizer at the cabin. There was no one up there at the cabin in that area. It's quite amazing, really. So it's for social isolation, you can't choose a better place to do it. And we were very safe. Our bishop incidentally says she encouraged us to not use the term safe, but use the term acceptable minimum level of risk. That's what we're trying to do. What is the acceptable minimum level of risk? Well, today I wanted to look at a passage from Paul's letter to the Philippians. And Philippians chapter 1, starting at verse starting at verse 20. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage to show that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, to die is gain. If I am to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor to me. Yet what shall I choose? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. But it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain, and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith, so that through my being with you again, your boasting in Christ Jesus will abound on account of me. Those words, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Great words. They've been used to justify some different kinds of things, though. They really have. And some churches, some pastors have used those words to justify why their church is now open to public worship again. That Paul says to live as Christ, to die as gain, that we are to flaunt death. We are to disregard COVID-19 and the risk of it. It's not about minimizing that risk. It's about standing courageously in the face of it, of ignoring it. There is a political rally in Oklahoma City today, and a woman was going to attend and said on the news, I really wanted to go to one of these. And yeah, I know there's some risk, and I know that I'm not minimizing the risk by going to it, but I hope the risk will be worth the gain. Well, as a church, we have then this task ahead of us, and a task force will tentatively meet this week to talk about what is the minimum acceptable lower level of risk, not safe. What can we do to be safe? Wait for a vaccine. Well, if we open up before that, then we'll be accepting some risk. We won't be safe, we'll accept. What does it mean, though, to accept some risk? Are churches who opening up flagrantly accepting some risk? I believe they're using Paul to justify accepting unacceptable levels of risk to people who are vulnerable. And I want to share a screen and show you why I believe that is true. This the screen I'm going to share comes from the State Department of Health and specifically talks about Yakima County. Well, let's take a look at that. If I can pull it up here. What is our risk and what is the acceptable level of risk? We've got to keep businesses open, and that's part of going to Idaho. We're traveling, and travelers do help keep the economy going. We try to use restaurants for a lunch and a dinner. We're trying not to order stuff on Amazon because I just assume we didn't have one corporation owning the entire world when all this thing is over. That's our hope. But if you've heard on the news, there are these things called metrics. Well, what are the metrics? Now they're on the screen. The first metric is the number of new diagnosed cases during the prior 2 weeks. In order to move to the next phase, to phase 2, we need to be under 25. The rate in Yakima County this week is over 700. We're not just not meeting the goal, we're nowhere near meeting the goal in the foreseeable future. We're number 1 in the state. That's the highest value in the state as far as total cases are over 5,000 cases. Are second only to King County, to Seattle. Wow. The second metric then, individuals tested. Well, we have to test over 50 individuals for each new case, and we're testing way too little, 3.2, nowhere near it. Now, the individuals tested who are then proving positive, that means for every 100 tests, you should have less than 2. So you need to do 101 tests and have 2 people or less. And it's 31%. That means almost a third of everybody getting tested in Yakima County right now is testing positive. Partly that's because they're only giving tests to people who are already suspected of having it or been infected by someone, been in contact by someone who has been confirmed to have it or who has symptoms. So we aren't yet anywhere near doing the kind of testing, the random testing, to bring that number down either. The licensed beds in hospital, it says we're meeting that goal, and actually, as of today, we are not. The hospital beds in Yakima County are over 80% full throughout the county. And that's a concern because the number is going up. In fact, we're going to hit capacity. It's going to hit 100% here within the next few days, they suspect, because of the number of cases that are still climbing in our county. Percent of licensed beds occupied by COVID-19, almost 1 out of 5 of those hospital beds are COVID-19 patients, and that's going to become 1 out of 4 very soon, I suspect. Has to be less than 1 out of 10. Those are the metrics that we watch, and every week then at the end of the week on Friday, we look at that again and go, where are we? So this will be the information that our Reopening the Church task force looks at, looking at soberly. That'll be our task to go, all right, we can't even talk about minimizing risk when the risk is still this high at this point. And there are churches that are doing outdoor worship. It's not really feasible for us. We don't have a large lawn where we could do that. We could do it in the parking lot, perhaps. And our task force will look at all of that. How can we do something in person, maybe in a park, have a brown bag picnic at some point, just so that we can be together with minimal risk. I did go out golfing yesterday when I got back from Idaho with a friend out at Black Rock. The friend had his golf cart. I had my golf cart. One person to a cart. It's more expensive to golf that way, but the golf course is accommodating people, lowering the prices. Bring your own sanitizer, wipe everything down. So we're being careful, but being outdoors seems to be one of the best ways to not become infected by not getting what they call that viral load, that exposure over a period of time. Paul says to live is Christ, to die is gain. To die of something that you're not necessarily dying from is foolishness. That is not gain. To expose ourselves foolishly is not gain. To expose ourselves with good risk management, personal protective equipment is a good idea, though, because those who can get out should get out. We've got to have an economy that still works. Otherwise, we have the double whammy. And believe me, I know my wife and I and my daughter and her fiance have spent a lot of agonizing time. We've invested money in tents and tables, a wedding dress, flowers, caterer. We have a wedding date, and it's in one of the 3 counties in Oregon, Clackamas County, that is part of the urban area, even though the wedding's in a rural area south of the Portland area. Clackamas County is still 10 people or less. If it's 25 or less and you're planning on a wedding for 150 to 200 people, does it even feel like a wedding? Other than the wedding party and the immediate families, there won't be a lot of people there. It almost feels like, gee, why don't you just take whatever money's left over and put it on a down payment on a house or go on a vacation, and we'll get a wedding license and do the wedding wherever we need to. And that's the other thing. They can't get a wedding license because the Clackamas County county clerk is closed. The office of the county is closed. No licenses are being issued. They don't want people to gather. But if necessary, Sue and I could drive down to Sacramento. The county is now open. They could get a marriage license, and we could do it right there in the little backyard of their apartment if necessary, get a couple of witnesses. We don't know. We're hoping that it will be 100 or less, so that maybe we can have maybe 50 people. It would at least feel like a wedding. These are tough times. I would rather ignore it all, but I really do like what Bishop Kristen says. Minimum acceptable level of risk, that each of us have to have a conversation with ourselves, with our spouse, with our families, our friends. What's the minimum acceptable level of risk? Social isolation, complete safety is necessary for those who are at high risk. For others, though, it's a continuum. And we've got to individually place ourselves on that continuum. By going to Idaho, we chose to accept some risk. By supporting businesses, by doing some takeout, we choose to accept some risk, and we do what we need to do to minimize the risk of exposure to ourselves, knowing that 100% safety is a myth. And if we figure out what's workable, then we'll have a manageable economy, manageable health. We'll continue doing Zoom. I'm committed to the Zoom. I'm committed to daily messages again. Thank you for the week off. I needed that after 10 weeks. And I'll be going away again in a few weeks. Got to have another weekend off in July. But it's good to be with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you all 10 a.m. tomorrow morning as we gather for word and sacrament worship. God bless you. See you then.